In the vastness of space, humanity's future hung by a thread. The year was 3124, and Earth was no longer the sole cradle of human civilization. Humanity had spread across the stars, colonizing planets, building cities among the asteroids, and creating a network of alliances that stretched light years. But peace was a fragile thing. For decades, tensions simmered between humanity and an alien coalition known as the Varnock Syndicate. The Varnock were not like humans, tall, insect-like creatures with shimmering exoskeletons and minds that worked in ways incomprehensible to most. They saw humans as invaders, encroaching on territories they claimed long before humanity even dreamed of reaching the stars. On board the warship Eclipse *, Captain Jonathan Hayes stood silently in the command center, staring at the holographic display of Kalos 7. It was a planet deep within Varnock-controlled space, its surface dotted with sprawling fortresses and weapons platforms. Earth Command had given him one objective: destroy it. The planet was a key stronghold for the Varnock, a hub for their military operations. If the Eclipse * could eliminate it, the tide of the war would shift in humanity's favor. But the order came with a heavy price. To destroy Kalos 7, Jonathan would have to use the ship's experimental weapon, a devastating device capable of reducing entire planets to ash. He had seen simulations of its power, and the thought of unleashing it made his stomach churn. "Captain," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Lieutenant Emily Dawson approached, her expression firm but not unkind. She was young, perhaps too young for the weight of her responsibilities, but she carried herself with confidence. "We've received final clearance from Earth Command. They want us to proceed immediately." Jonathan nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on the hologram. "Do we have confirmation that the civilians have been evacuated?" Emily hesitated. This wasn't the first time he had asked the question. "No, sir. We're operating under the assumption that the Varnock wouldn't leave anyone behind willingly. But," she trailed off, unsure how to finish. "But what?" Jonathan turned to face her, his voice calm but sharp. "But some of the intel suggests there might still be non-combatants on the surface. Refugees, maybe, or workers trapped in the bunkers." The room fell silent. The crew around them pretended to focus on their tasks. But Jonathan knew they were listening. Every decision he made here would ripple through history. Destroying Kalos 7 would save countless lives in the long run, perhaps even ensure humanity's survival. But at what cost? How many innocent people would die in the process? And if he hesitated, would the Varnock see it as weakness? Would they strike back harder, faster, deadlier? Jonathan clenched his fists behind his back, his mind racing. He thought about his own family back on Earth, his wife, Sarah, and their 2 children. What kind of world would he be fighting for if he became the monster he sought to defeat? Yet he also thought about the soldiers under his command, men and women who trusted him to lead them safely through this war. Failure wasn't an option. "We'll move forward," he said finally, his voice steady. "But I want every sensor array focused on the planet. If there's even a hint of survivors, we adjust our strategy." "Understood." "Yes, sir," Emily replied, though her tone betrayed a flicker of doubt. As the Eclipse * began its approach toward Kalos 7, Jonathan gazed out the viewport at the distant planet. It looked peaceful from here, almost serene. But he knew better. Beneath its surface lay weapons, armies, and untold horrors. And somewhere, perhaps hidden in the shadows, were lives hanging in the balance. Lives he couldn't afford to ignore. As the Eclipse * drew closer to Kalos 7, the mood aboard the ship grew tense. The crew moved quickly through the corridors, their faces pale with worry. Everyone knew what was at stake. The mission wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about survival. But the cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone's minds, especially Captain Jonathan Hayes. In the engineering bay, Daniel Carter worked tirelessly to ensure the ship's systems were running smoothly. A tall man with dark hair and oil-streaked hands, Daniel was known for his calm demeanor even in the worst situations. He had spent years maintaining the Eclipse *, and he understood its inner workings better than anyone else. But today, something felt different. The experimental weapon, the one capable of destroying entire planets, was unlike anything he'd ever worked on before. It was powerful, yes, but also unpredictable. Every time he thought about activating it, a knot formed in his stomach. Daniel called Rachel Meyer, the communications officer, as she entered the engineering bay. Her voice was soft but urgent. "I need your help." "What is it?" Daniel asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "I've been monitoring transmissions from Kalos 7, Rachel explained. She held up a small tablet displaying lines of text and audio clips. There are signs that civilians might still be there. Refugees hiding in underground bunkers, maybe workers who couldn't evacuate in time. Daniel frowned. "Are you sure?" "I'm not certain," Rachel admitted. "The signals are faint, and the Varnock are jamming most frequencies. But if there's even a chance..." She didn't finish her sentence. They both knew what was at risk. If the Eclipse fired its weapon, no one on Kalos 7 would survive. Not the soldiers, not the civilians, not even the animals or plants. The planet would become a wasteland, lifeless and barren. "We have to tell the captain," Daniel said firmly. Rachel hesitated. "And then what? What if Earth Command overrides him? What if they force us to fire anyway?" Daniel sighed. He didn't have an answer. All he could do was nod and follow Rachel to the command center. When they arrived, Jonathan was already deep in discussion with Lieutenant Emily Dawson. The two stood over a large holographic map of Kalos 7, their expressions grim. Jonathan looked up as Daniel and Rachel approached. "What is it?" he asked. Rachel handed him the tablet. "Sir, we've intercepted some transmissions. There's a possibility that civilians are still on the planet." Jonathan's jaw tightened. He studied the data carefully, his eyes scanning the fragmented messages. After a moment, he turned to Emily. "Do we have confirmation?" "No, sir," Emily replied. "But the intel suggests the Varnock may have kept some populations behind as leverage or hostages." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Firing the weapon now would mean killing innocent people, but holding back could give the Varnock time to regroup and launch a counterattack. Either way, lives would be lost. "We can't ignore this," Jonathan said finally. His voice was quiet but firm. "If there's even a small chance that civilians are still alive, we need to find another way." Emily crossed her arms, clearly frustrated. "Captain, with all due respect, Earth Command gave us direct orders. We don't have the luxury of second-guessing them. And I don't have the luxury of ignoring my conscience," Jonathan shot back. "We're not savages, Lieutenant. If we start treating every planet like a target, we'll lose sight of why we're fighting in the first place." The tension between them was palpable. The rest of the crew exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to say or do. Finally, Daniel spoke up. "Sir," he said cautiously, "what if we try disabling their defenses first? Maybe we can weaken them enough to avoid using the weapon altogether." Jonathan considered this. It was risky, perhaps even impossible, but it was worth considering. "It's a long shot," he admitted, "but it's better than wiping out an entire planet without knowing for sure." Emily shook her head, clearly unconvinced. "This isn't just about ethics, Captain. Delaying the strike puts the Eclipse at risk. And if we fail..." She didn't need to finish. If they failed, the Varnock would crush them. The war would tip in their favor, and humanity's future would hang by a thread. Despite the growing pressure, Jonathan made his decision. "We'll proceed with caution," he said. "Target their weapons platforms and fortresses, but hold off on the main weapon until we know more." "That's an order." The crew nodded reluctantly, each carrying their own doubts and fears. As the Eclipse prepared to engage the enemy, Jonathan stared out the viewport at the distant planet. Kalos 7 loomed ahead, its surface dotted with lights and structures. Somewhere down there, lives hung in the balance, lives he couldn't afford to forget. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Eclipse unleashed its first wave of attacks. Bright beams of energy shot through space, striking Varnock ships that had been lying in wait near Kelos 7. The enemy fleet was vast, dozens of sleek, angular vessels swarming like insects around their home planet. But the Eclipse was no ordinary warship. Its advanced weapons systems and reinforced hull made it a formidable opponent, even against overwhelming odds. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood at the center of the command deck, his eyes glued to the holographic display showing the positions of both fleets. His hands gripped the railing tightly as he issued commands to his crew. "Target their lead cruiser," he ordered calmly. "Disable their engines, but don't destroy them. We need intel." Lieutenant Emily Dawson relayed the order to the weapons team. Moments later, a concentrated blast from the Eclipse's cannons struck the Varnock flagship, crippling its propulsion systems. The alien ship drifted helplessly, its once menacing form now reduced to a floating hulk. Cheers erupted from the crew, but Jonathan silenced them with a sharp glance. There was no time for celebration. The fight was far from over. As the battle raged on, Daniel Carter worked furiously in the engineering bay, monitoring the ship's power levels. The experimental weapon, the one capable of annihilating planets, was still offline, but the strain of combat was pushing the Eclipse's systems to their limits. Sweat dripped down his face as he adjusted controls and rerouted energy to keep the shield stable. Nearby, Rachel Meyer listened intently to intercepted communications, searching for any sign of survivors on Kelos 7. "Captain," Rachel called out over the intercom, her voice tense. "I've picked up more signals. They're faint, but they seem to be coming from underground structures. It's possible there are civilians hiding there." Jonathan clenched his jaw. This was the confirmation he dreaded and hoped for, all at once. "Understood," he replied. "Keep me updated." Meanwhile, the Varnock were not idle. Their smaller ships darted around the Eclipse, launching relentless assaults designed to wear down its defenses. Explosions rocked the ship as enemy fire breached the outer hull in several places. Alarms blared throughout the corridors, and damage reports flooded into the command center. "Shields are holding at 60%, Emily reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "But we can't take much more of this." Jonathan nodded grimly. He turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare the secondary cannon array. Focus fire on their fighters. We need to clear a path." The order was carried out swiftly. The Eclipse's secondary cannons unleashed a barrage of plasma blasts, tearing through the swarm of Varnock ships. One by one, they exploded in bursts of light, their wreckage drifting into the void. For a brief moment, it seemed the tide was turning in humanity's favor. But then, disaster struck. A group of Varnock bombers broke through the defensive line and launched a direct assault on the Eclipse's starboard side. The impact was catastrophic. Panels sparked, lights flickered, and part of the ship's artificial gravity failed, sending crew members tumbling across the floor. "We've lost containment in Section 7, Daniel shouted over the comms. "I'm working to seal the breach, but I need backup." "I'll send a repair team," Jonathan replied. He turned to Emily. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," she said bluntly. "If we lose another section, we won't have enough power to maintain the shields." Jonathan took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. They couldn't afford panic. Not now. He glanced at the holographic map again. The Varnock fleet was regrouping, preparing for another wave of attacks. Time was running out. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "prepare the main weapon. If we don't disable their command center soon, we won't survive this fight." Emily hesitated. She knew what activating the weapon meant, not just for the Varnock, but for anyone still alive on Kelos 7. Yet she also understood the stakes. Without hesitation, she gave the order. As the countdown began, Jonathan felt a weight settle over him. He stared out the viewport at the distant planet, its surface glowing faintly under the light of its sun. Somewhere down there, lives hung in the balance, lives he might never save or forgive himself for losing. The Eclipse trembled as the weapon powered up, its hum filling the air like a death knell. The tension aboard the Eclipse was unbearable. The experimental weapon hummed ominously, its energy building with every passing second. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances as they prepared for what might come next. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood silently in the command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of Kalos 7. The planet loomed large now, its surface a patchwork of green forests, barren deserts, and sprawling alien structures. Somewhere beneath that surface, civilians might still be alive. Jonathan couldn't shake the thought. In the engineering bay, Daniel Carter worked frantically to repair the damage caused by the Varnock bombers. His hands moved quickly over control panels, rerouting power and sealing breaches. Sweat dripped from his brow, but he didn't stop. Every second counted. Nearby, a junior engineer handed him tools, her hands trembling with fear. "We're losing stability in Sector 4, she warned, her voice barely audible over the alarms. "I know," Daniel replied sharply. "Just keep those coolant lines flowing. If the reactor overheats, we're done." He knew the truth. The Eclipse was strong, but it wasn't invincible. Another direct hit like the one they'd just endured could cripple the ship and leave them defenseless against the Varnock fleet. Daniel pushed the thought aside and focused on the task at hand. He had to hold the ship together, no matter what. On the command deck, Rachel Meyer continued to monitor intercepted transmissions. Her fingers flew across her console as she tried to piece together fragmented signals. Suddenly, her eyes widened. "Captain," she called out urgently, "I've got something." Clear audio this time. Jonathan turned to her, his expression grave. "What is it?" "It's coming from underground bunkers," Rachel explained. "There are people down there, hundreds of them. They're pleading for help." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. Firing the weapon now would mean wiping out not just the Varnock forces, but also innocent lives. Jonathan clenched his fists, his mind racing. He glanced at Lieutenant Emily Dawson, who stood nearby, her face pale. She had already given the order to activate the weapon. Now she looked torn between duty and morality. "Delay the countdown," Jonathan ordered firmly. "We need more time." Emily hesitated. "Sir, if we wait too long, the Varnock will regroup. We'll lose our advantage." "Unaware of the risks," Jonathan snapped. "But I won't slaughter innocents unless I have no other choice." His words hung in the air. The crew watched nervously as Emily nodded reluctantly and relayed the order to halt the weapon's activation. The hum faded slightly, giving everyone a moment to breathe, but not to relax. Outside, the Varnock fleet was reorganizing, preparing for another assault. Back in engineering, Daniel finally managed to stabilize the damaged sections of the ship. Exhausted but relieved, he leaned against a console and wiped his forehead. "That should hold for now," he muttered to himself. But his relief was short-lived. An alarm blared, signaling another incoming wave of enemy ships. "They're targeting us again," someone shouted. Daniel grabbed a nearby railing as the ship shuddered violently. Explosions echoed through the corridors, and the lights flickered once more. Despite the chaos, he forced himself to stay calm. "Keep your heads," he yelled to the crew around him. "We can get through this." Up on the command deck, Jonathan made a decision. "Lieutenant, prepare a tactical strike team. We're going to disable the Varnock command center on Kalos 7 ourselves." Emily stared at him, stunned. "You want to send a ground team?" "That's suicide." "It's our only shot," Jonathan replied. "If we can take out their central hub, we might be able to end this without firing the weapon." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Understood. I'll assemble the team." As the plan came together, Jonathan allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He thought about the lives depending on him. The crew of the Eclipse *, the civilians hiding on Kalos 7, and the billions back on Earth who were counting on humanity to win this war. He couldn't afford to fail. Not now. Not ever. With renewed determination, he turned to the viewport and gazed at the distant planet. Kalos 7 awaited, its fate resting in his hands. The ground assault team gathered in the Eclipse's hangar bay, their faces tense but resolute. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood at the center of the group, clad in reinforced combat armor and carrying a rifle slung across his shoulder. Beside him were Lieutenant Emily Dawson, Engineer Daniel Carter, Medic Samantha Brooks, and 2 other soldiers chosen for their skills and experience. Each member of the team carried not just weapons and supplies, but also the weight of what they were about to attempt, a dangerous mission that could turn the tide of the war. Jonathan addressed the group one last time before departure. "Our goal is simple," he said, his voice firm but calm. "We disable the Varnock Command Center on Kalos 7. No unnecessary risks. If we succeed, we might avoid using the weapon entirely. Are we clear?" The team nodded silently, their expressions grim. They knew the odds were against them. The command center was deep underground, protected by layers of defenses and swarming with Varnock forces. But failure wasn't an option, not when so many lives depended on their success. As the shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, the team braced themselves for what lay ahead. Through the viewport, they could see the alien landscape of Kalos 7, jagged mountains, sprawling fortresses, and glowing energy fields shimmering in the distance. Smoke rose from areas already hit by orbital strikes, a reminder of the devastation humanity had already unleashed. Upon landing, the team disembarked quickly, moving under cover of darkness. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning metal. Samantha scanned the surroundings with a handheld device, searching for signs of life. "There are heat signatures nearby," she whispered. "Could be civilians." "Stay focused," Jonathan reminded her. "We're here for the command center." The journey to the bunker was fraught with danger. Automated defense turrets scanned the area, their red beams cutting through the haze. The team moved cautiously, using natural cover to avoid detection. At one point, Daniel knelt beside a fallen Varnock drone, examining its damaged circuits. "These things are rigged to self-destruct if tampered with," he muttered. "Watch your step." Despite their caution, they couldn't avoid conflict forever. A patrol of Varnock soldiers appeared around a ridge, their insect-like forms glinting in the dim light. Emily reacted first, firing a precise shot that took down the lead soldier. Chaos erupted as the rest of the team opened fire. The firefight was brief but intense, leaving several Varnock dead and the humans unharmed, but shaken. "We need to move faster," Jonathan urged. "They'll send reinforcements soon." The team pressed on, finally reaching the entrance to the underground bunker. It was sealed by a massive metal door, guarded by another set of automated defenses. Daniel knelt in front of the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he worked to bypass the security system. "This'll take a minute," he said, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. As he worked, Samantha tended to a minor injury sustained during the earlier skirmish. She glanced at Jonathan, her expression uneasy. "What happens if we find civilians inside?" she asked quietly. "We do what we can to protect them," Jonathan replied without hesitation. "But our priority is disabling the command center. Without it, the Varnock won't be able to coordinate their attacks." Finally, Daniel gave a triumphant nod. "Got it." The heavy door slid open with a groan, revealing the dimly lit corridor beyond. The team exchanged glances, then stepped inside, weapons raised. The bunker was eerily quiet, the only sounds the hum of machinery and the distant echo of footsteps. As they moved deeper, they began to notice signs of life. Abandoned equipment, discarded rations, and scorch marks on the walls. Someone had been here recently. Then they heard it, Faint cries for help, muffled but unmistakable. Jonathan motioned for the team to follow the sound. Rounding a corner, they found a group of frightened civilians huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Among them were children, clinging to their parents. Samantha immediately rushed to their side, offering reassurance and medical attention. "You're safe now," she told them gently. "We're here to help." Jonathan looked at the scene, his heart heavy. These were the lives he had sworn to protect. But time was running out. Somewhere deeper in the bunker, the Varnock Command Center awaited. And with it, the fate of Kalos 7. The discovery of the civilians complicated everything. Captain Jonathan Hayes knelt beside a young boy, no older than 6, who clung to his mother's leg. The boy's wide eyes were filled with fear, and Jonathan felt a pang of guilt deep in his chest. These people had done nothing wrong. They were victims caught in a war they didn't ask for. Yet here he was, leading a team into their sanctuary, risking everything, including their lives, to stop the Varnock. "We can't leave them here," Samantha Brooks said firmly as she handed a small water pouch to one of the civilians. Her voice carried both compassion and urgency. "If we proceed without evacuating them, they'll die when the Varnock defenses collapse. Or worse, if reinforcements arrive." Jonathan nodded, though the decision weighed heavily on him. "We'll split up," he decided. "Samantha, take half the team and get these people to safety. Find a secure location and stay hidden until we complete our mission. Emily, Daniel, and I will press on to the command center." Samantha hesitated, clearly torn between her duty as a medic and her loyalty to the mission. But she understood the stakes. "Understood, Captain," she said finally. She turned to the frightened group of civilians. "Follow me. Stay close, and do exactly as I say." As Samantha led the civilians away, Jonathan turned to Emily and Daniel. "Let's move. Every second counts." The trio pressed deeper into the bunker, navigating narrow corridors illuminated by flickering lights. The air grew colder, and the hum of machinery grew louder. Automated turrets lined the walls, their red sensors scanning for intruders. Daniel worked quickly to disable each one before it could detect them, his hand steady despite the tension. "These systems are advanced," he muttered. "It's like they anticipated an attack." "They probably did," Emily replied grimly. "The Varnock don't leave anything to chance." They reached a large chamber where the corridor split into 3 paths. Jonathan studied the map displayed on his wrist console. "The command center is straight ahead," he said, pointing down the middle path. "But it's heavily fortified. We'll need to be careful." As they moved forward, the signs of Varnock presence became more obvious. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the floor vibrated faintly with the sound of machinery. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, throwing them off balance. A loud alarm blared, echoing through the corridors. "They know we're here," Emily shouted over the noise. "Keep moving," Jonathan ordered. He helped Daniel to his feet, and the 3 of them sprinted toward the command center. Ahead, a massive reinforced door blocked their path. Daniel dropped to his knees, pulling out a handheld device to interface with the lock. "This is going to take a minute," he said, his fingers flying over the controls. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed behind them. Varnock soldiers were closing in fast. Emily raised her rifle, taking aim at the corridor. "Hurry, Daniel," she urged, her voice tight with tension. "I'm trying." Daniel snapped back, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Finally, the door hissed open, revealing a vast control room filled with glowing panels and alien technology. In the center stood a towering holographic display showing maps of Kalos 7 and the surrounding space. Jonathan stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. "Find the main system," he instructed. "Disable it." Daniel rushed to one of the consoles, his hands working furiously to decipher the alien interface. Meanwhile, Emily took position near the entrance, firing controlled bursts at the incoming Varnock forces. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. "We've got company," Emily shouted, ducking behind cover as enemy fire intensified. "I'm almost there," Daniel replied, his voice strained. His fingers hovered over a glowing button. "If I press this, it should shut down the entire network, but it might trigger a self-destruct sequence." "Do it," Jonathan ordered without hesitation. "We can't let them use this place against us." Daniel nodded and pressed the button. The room trembled as alarms blared even louder. Red warning lights flashed, bathing the chamber in an eerie glow. "We need to go, now," Jonathan yelled. The team turned to flee, but the Varnock were already pouring into the room. Emily fired again, covering their retreat as they sprinted back toward the exit. Behind them, the command center began to collapse, its systems failing one by one. Jonathan glanced over his shoulder, watching the destruction unfold. They had done what they came to do, but the cost of their actions would linger long after they left Kalos 7. As the team raced through the collapsing bunker, the walls around them groaned and cracked under the strain of the self-destruct sequence. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the floor trembled with each step they took. Captain Jonathan Hayes led the way, his rifle raised and his eyes scanning the corridor ahead for any signs of danger. Behind him, Emily Dawson fired occasional bursts over her shoulder to hold off the pursuing Varnock soldiers, while Daniel Carter struggled to keep up, his breathing labored from exhaustion. "We're not going to make it," Daniel shouted, his voice hoarse as he stumbled over a chunk of fallen debris. "Yes, we are," Jonathan snapped back without looking. "Keep moving." The sound of explosions grew louder, echoing through the narrow passageways like rolling thunder. The bunker was coming apart piece by piece, and every second counted. Just as Jonathan turned a corner, a section of the ceiling collapsed in front of them, blocking their path. He cursed under his breath and quickly scanned for another route. Spotting a side corridor to their left, he gestured for the others to follow. "This way." They darted into the new passage, only to find themselves face to face with a group of Varnock soldiers guarding what looked like an emergency exit. The insect-like aliens hissed angrily, raising their weapons. Without hesitation, Emily dove behind a nearby pillar and returned fire, forcing the Varnock to take cover. Bullets ricocheted off the metal walls, sparks flying in all directions. "Daniel, get that door open," Jonathan barked, joining Emily in providing cover fire. His heart pounded in his chest as he squeezed the trigger again and again, each shot feeling heavier than the last. He knew they were running out of time and ammunition. Daniel scrambled toward the exit, pulling out his handheld device once more. His hands trembled as he worked to hack into the locking mechanism. Come on," he muttered under his breath. Finally, the door slid open with a hiss, revealing a steep staircase leading upward to the surface. "Go," Jonathan ordered, motioning for Daniel to move first. Emily followed close behind, still firing to keep the Varnock at bay. Jonathan brought up the rear, ensuring no one was left behind. As soon as they reached the stairs, the bunker shook violently, nearly knocking them off their feet. "Move faster," Jonathan yelled, pushing Daniel ahead of him. The roar of collapsing structures filled the air, drowning out everything else. They climbed as fast as they could, their legs burning with effort. Behind them, the staircase began to crumble, chunks of metal and concrete falling into the abyss below. When they finally burst through the exit, the cool night air hit them like a slap. They emerged onto a rocky plateau overlooking the battlefield below. The sight was overwhelming. The Eclipse hovered in the distance, its hull battered but intact, while smaller Varnock ships swarmed around it like angry hornets. Fires burned across the landscape, casting an orange glow over the horizon. "Where's Samantha and the civilians?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with worry. Jonathan scanned the area until he spotted a cluster of figures huddled near a ridge about 50 meters away. Relief washed over him as he recognized Samantha kneeling beside the group, tending to a wounded man. "Over there," he said, pointing. The team sprinted toward them, dodging stray blasts from the ongoing battle above. When they reached the group, Samantha looked up, her face pale but determined. "We're okay," she said quickly, "but we can't stay here." Before Jonathan could respond, Rachel Meyer's voice crackled over their comms. "Captain, this is Rachel. Earth Command just sent a priority message. They're overriding your authority. If you don't destroy Kalos 7 within the next 10 minutes, they'll remotely activate the weapon themselves." The news hit Jonathan like a punch to the gut. He clenched his fists, his mind racing. Destroying the planet now would mean killing everyone. The civilians, the Varnak, and possibly even his own crew if they couldn't escape in time. But disobeying Earth Command carried its own risks. Either way, lives would be lost. "What do we do, sir?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Jonathan stared at the frightened faces around him. Men, women, and children who had already suffered so much. Then he looked at his crew, who had risked everything to protect them. Slowly, he straightened his posture and spoke with quiet resolve. "We protect them. All of them." Jonathan's decision was clear, but the weight of it pressed down on him like a mountain. Protecting the civilians meant defying Earth Command, a move that could label him a traitor and put the entire crew in jeopardy. Yet, as he looked at the frightened faces around him, he knew there was no other choice. These people had trusted him, and he wouldn't betray that trust, not even for the sake of orders. "Rachel," Jonathan said into his communicator, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I need you to buy us more time. Stall Earth Command however you can." There was a pause before Rachel replied, her tone cautious. "Captain, I can try. But if they override us—" "They won't," Jonathan interrupted firmly. "Not if we act fast. Relay our coordinates to the Eclipse *, and prepare for immediate extraction. We're bringing these people with us." Emily stepped closer, her expression conflicted. "Sir, this is insane. Even if we save them now, what happens when Earth Command finds out? They'll court-martial you, or worse." "I'm aware of the risks," Jonathan said, meeting her gaze. "But I didn't sign up to kill innocent people. If we lose sight of who we're fighting for, then we've already lost." Emily hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. She turned to help organize the civilians, her movements sharp and efficient. Daniel and Samantha worked together to guide the group toward a safe zone where the shuttle could land. The air was thick with tension as distant explosions lit up the sky, a constant reminder of the battle raging above. Back aboard the Eclipse *, Rachel Meyer sat in the communications bay, her fingers flying across the console. She had intercepted Earth Command's override signal and rerouted it through a series of decoy channels, buying precious minutes. But she knew it wouldn't hold forever. Her hands trembled as she typed, sweat beading on her forehead. "Come on, just a little longer," she whispered to herself. On the ground, the team moved quickly, their pace driven by desperation. The civilians stumbled along, some coughing from the dust-filled air, others clutching their children tightly. Among them was an elderly man leaning heavily on a cane. Samantha stayed close to him, offering support and encouragement. "We're almost there," she assured him, though her own fear was evident in her eyes. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the darkness. A squad of Varnak soldiers emerged from behind a ridge, their weapons trained on the group. Jonathan raised his rifle, his jaw tightening. "Take cover," he shouted. The team scattered, finding shelter behind rocks and debris as the Varnak opened fire. Bullets whizzed past, kicking up clouds of dirt. Emily returned fire, her shots precise and deadly. One by one, the Varnak fell, but more kept coming. "We're outnumbered," she yelled. "We can't hold them off forever." "We don't have to," Jonathan replied. He glanced skyward, spotting the faint outline of the shuttle descending toward their position. Just a little longer. The shuttle touched down with a soft thud, its engines roaring as the ramp lowered. Daniel waved frantically to the civilians, urging them to hurry. "Go, go, go," he shouted, his voice hoarse. The group surged forward, scrambling onto the shuttle. Samantha stayed behind until the last civilian boarded, then sprinted toward the ramp. Emily covered their retreat, firing steadily until she was the final one to leap aboard. As soon as she was inside, the ramp closed, and the shuttle lifted off. Below, the remaining Varnock soldiers fired wildly, their shots bouncing harmlessly off the shuttle's hull. Through the viewport, Jonathan watched Kalos 7 grow smaller as they ascended. His relief was short-lived, however. The experimental weapon still loomed over everything, its countdown ticking away in the back of his mind. As the shuttle docked with the Eclipse *, Jonathan turned to his crew. "Prepare the ship for emergency departure. We're getting these people to safety, and then we'll deal with Earth Command." The Eclipse * roared to life as its engines powered up, the hum of its systems filling the corridors. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the holographic display showing Kalos 7 below. The planet was scared from the battle. Smoke rose from burning cities, and the faint glow of energy weapons still lit up parts of the surface. For now, the civilians were safe aboard the ship, but the danger was far from over. Earth Command's override signal could activate the experimental weapon at any moment, and there was no telling how much time they had left. "Shields are holding steady," Lieutenant Emily Dawson reported, her voice tense as she monitored the console. "But we've got Varnock ships closing in fast." Jonathan nodded grimly. "Keep us mobile. Avoid direct confrontation if you can. We don't need another fight right now." Rachel Meyer entered the command deck, her face pale but determined. She had done everything she could to delay Earth Command, but the strain of her actions was evident. "Captain," she said quietly, "they're onto us. They've sent a priority override code. If we don't disable it soon, they'll take control of the weapon remotely." Jonathan clenched his fists. He had known this moment would come, but hearing it confirmed made his stomach churn. "How long do we have?" "Minutes," Rachel replied. "Maybe less." Daniel Carter rushed into the room, his hands smudged with grease from working in the engineering bay. "I've isolated the weapon's core system," he said quickly. "If we sever the connection manually, we can block their override. But it's risky. It might trigger a feedback loop that could damage the ship." "It's our only option," Jonathan said without hesitation. "Do it." Daniel hesitated, glancing at the others. "If something goes wrong." "We'll deal with it," Jonathan interrupted firmly. "Just get it done." As Daniel hurried back to the engineering bay, the Eclipse * shuddered under the impact of Varnock fire. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. Emily cursed under her breath as she adjusted the ship's trajectory, narrowly avoiding a collision with an enemy vessel. "They're not letting us go without a fight," she muttered. "They won't stop until we're destroyed, or until we destroy them," Jonathan replied. His voice softened as he added, "Which is exactly why we can't use that weapon. Not like this." In the engineering bay, Daniel worked furiously, his fingers flying over the controls as he rerouted power and severed connections. Sweat dripped down his face, and his hands trembled with exhaustion. Behind him, Samantha Brooks stood ready with a fire extinguisher, watching for any sign of overheating equipment. "You've got this," she said encouragingly, though her own fear was evident in her wide eyes. Suddenly, the entire ship jolted violently as a Varnock missile struck the outer hull. Sparks flew, and part of the ceiling collapsed, narrowly missing Daniel. He stumbled but didn't stop, his focus unwavering. Finally, with a sharp click, the connection was severed. The hum of the weapon faded, replaced by an eerie silence. "It's done," Daniel gasped, leaning against the console for support. "Their override is blocked." Samantha let out a shaky breath of relief. "Good work." Back on the command deck, Rachel confirmed the news. "Earth Command signal has been cut off. We're clear, for now." Jonathan allowed himself a brief moment of relief before turning his attention to the battle outside. The Varnock fleet was relentless, their ships swarming around the Eclipse like predators circling prey. But Jonathan had one last card to play. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Broadcast to both the Varnock and Earth Command." Rachel hesitated, then nodded. "Channel open." Jonathan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm as he addressed the galaxy. "This is Captain Jonathan Hayes of the Eclipse to the Varnock Syndicate. Kalos 7 is no longer your stronghold. It belongs to the people who call it home, and we will protect them. To Earth Command. If humanity must sacrifice its soul to win this war, then we've already lost. I declare Kalos 7 a demilitarized zone. Fire upon it, and you fire upon us." The room fell silent as the message echoed through space. For a moment, it seemed the universe itself held its breath. Then, slowly, the Varnock ships began to retreat, their movements cautious but deliberate. Whether out of respect or uncertainty, they chose not to press the attack. Jonathan exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. They had survived, for now, but the cost of their defiance would linger long after the battle ended. The Eclipse hovered silently in orbit around Kalos 7, its battered hull a testament to the battle that had just unfolded. The Varnock fleet had withdrawn, their retreat marked by eerie silence. For the first time in hours, the crew allowed themselves to breathe, though the tension remained palpable. Captain Jonathan Hayes stood on the command deck, his gaze fixed on the planet below. Its surface was scared but alive, its people spared from destruction. It was a small victory, but one that carried immense weight. Rachel Meyer approached him cautiously, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands. "Sir," she began hesitantly, "Earth Command is demanding an explanation. They're furious about the override block." Jonathan nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Let them be angry. What we did here today wasn't defiance. It was humanity's last stand for decency. If they want to punish me for saving lives, so be it." Rachel hesitated before speaking again. "Do you really think they'll listen to reason?" "They don't have a choice," Jonathan replied firmly. "If humanity becomes the monster we're fighting against, then what are we even fighting for? I made my decision, and I'll stand by it." His words resonated throughout the ship as news of his broadcast spread among the crew. Some were inspired, others terrified, but all felt a sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Lieutenant Emily Dawson stood nearby, her arms crossed as she processed everything that had happened. She had questioned Jonathan's choices at every turn, but now, seeing the civilians safe aboard the Eclipse, she couldn't deny the rightness of his actions. "You knew this would cost you," Emily said quietly, stepping closer to him. "Your career, maybe even your freedom." "It doesn't matter," Jonathan responded without looking at her. "What matters is that those people down there get a chance to rebuild. That's why we fight. Not to destroy, but to protect." In the medical bay, Samantha Brooks tended to the wounded civilians, her movements gentle and precise. Many of them were frightened and confused, unsure of what the future held. But when they looked at her, they saw kindness and hope. One of the children, a little girl with wide eyes, reached out to touch her hand. Samantha smiled softly, squeezing the girl's fingers reassuringly. "You're safe now," she whispered. "That's all that matters." Meanwhile, Daniel Carter worked tirelessly in the engineering bay, repairing the damage inflicted during the battle. His hands moved methodically over the consoles, but his mind replayed the events of the day. He thought about the weapon he had disabled, the power it held, and the devastation it could have caused. For the first time, he felt proud of his role in stopping it. "We didn't just save a planet," he muttered to himself. "We saved ourselves." Hours later, the Eclipse received an unexpected transmission. It came not from Earth Command, but from the Varnock High Council. Their message was brief but clear. They acknowledged humanity's restraint and agreed to negotiate peace terms regarding Kalos 7. The planet would remain neutral ground, a sanctuary for its people. Jonathan listened to the message in stunned silence. Against all odds, his gamble had paid off. The war wasn't over, but perhaps a fragile truce could pave the way for something better. As the Eclipse set course for home, the crew gathered on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet reflection. Lives had been saved, sacrifices made, and lessons learned. Jonathan stood apart from the group, staring into the vastness of space. He thought about the cost of war, not just in lives lost, but in humanity's collective soul. Today, they had chosen compassion over destruction, mercy over vengeance. And though the road ahead would be difficult, he knew they had taken the first step toward a brighter future. For the first time in years, Jonathan allowed himself to feel hope.